Hello and welcome to another episode of International Politics. Today we'll talk about Australia. This country has a very specific position in international relations. Due to its history, cultural heritage and geography, Australia today faces great challenges. Australia is a truly huge country with over 7.5 million square kilometers of land. It is the sixth biggest country on the planet. However, as much as two-thirds of Australian continent is covered by deserts. Good conditions for settlements mainly stretches over the coastline. For a country this big, it can be surprising that it has a population of only 25.5 million, most of which lives in five big cities: Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth and Adelaide. In terms of geography, however, the most fascinating thing is that in such a distant place on the globe, in such abstract place when you consider its origins, Western culture exists and thrives. People have lived in Australia for a very long time. First cultures appeared probably around 40,000 years ago, but some scientists estimate that it could have happened even earlier. The cultures that developed there over the next millennia did it in isolation, without frequent contacts with the rest of the world. So people and societies functioned there in completely different manner. They did so until this great island was found by the Europeans. The first were the Dutch, who have built a great trading empire and their great prosperity exploiting those parts of the globe, mainly today's Indonesia. Long after the Dutch, 164 years later, British Captain James Cook reached the shores of Australia and changed the course of the continent's history forever. British colonization followed very well-known patterns. First small outposts, then first societies, many more settlements, gradually expanding English influence. And it is true that Australia used to be a penal colony with UK convicts brought there for many decades. All these 250 years of British influence has a great consequences for Australia's political system. Formally, the head of the state is still British Queen, although she is represented by Governor-General. Of course, the real power lies in the hand of the government. Australia is a parliamentary constitutional monarchy, and when it comes to legal system, like in UK or in United States, Australia relies on the common law system in which the legal precedents play a key role. Additionally, Australia would have a big chance in competition for the funniest or cutest coat of arms. Kangaroo and ostrich support the shield, and this kangaroo has some truly huge feats. In any case, the historical heritage of contemporary Australia means that its political, social and cultural system place it in the circle of countries of the very broadly understood West. West in the cultural sense, of course, because when it comes to geography, it is difficult to be farther to the east. And this is exactly what brings great challenges to Australia in international relations. This still very young country will have to face challenges it has not experienced yet. All of Australia's recent history since colonial times coincides with the great decline of the significance of Asia. Australia was created when Europeans ruled everywhere. This distance, this cultural loneliness was not felt that much, but now, when Asia is actually back in the game, Australia faces new challenges. After World War II, the United States became a truly global power and Australia cooperated with the Americans closely. In 1951, both countries signed military cooperation deal, and to this day they cooperate closely in the field of security. In this context of security, it is necessary to mention the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, informal strategic cooperation between Australia, the United States, Japan and India. There are also other countries in the region that are concerned about China's actions. And while security policy is based on natural alliance with the Americans, natural because of cultural similarities, when it comes to trade, well, it is based on the growing economy of People's Republic of China. According to the data on the official website of Australian government, China is by far Australia's largest trading partner. Counting both imports and exports, over 26% of the value of international trade in Australia comes from cooperation with China. And for the second country on the list, Japan, the value is less than 10%. Moreover, the structure of this trade with China is even more interesting. Only 19% of imported products come from this country, but as much as 33% of Australians' export go to the growing Chinese market. However, these values may already be out of date. In an article published in the Financial Times, we can read that the trade with China hit a new record in June last year because of the huge Chinese stimulus package after reopening economy. In other words, Australia makes money on trading with the Chinese. Economy which is expanding in such pace needs goods, for example raw materials, and the Chinese are supplied by, among others, Australians. Since we are talking about Australia's most important trading partner, country became in a sense dependent on China, as it based its prosperity largely on the huge and still developing Chinese market. Until recently, a situation when country relies on United States when it comes to security, but cooperates with China when it comes to trade, until recently it would not raise a major problem. But because of relations between those two giants, well, it has some consequences now. Today, relations between Australia and China are extremely tense. They are tense despite the fact that China is so important to Australia's economy, or maybe because of that. Australia presents clear anti-Chinese political stance. In 2018, a law was passed prohibiting the transfers of funds for political purposes from abroad because of the fear that political influence could be bought by the Chinese. Australia was the first country to exclude the Chinese giant Huawei from the 5G technology market, and finally, Australia was the country that loudly demanded investigations into the Chinese origins of the coronavirus epidemic. And this is where, for the Chinese, the red line was crossed. They decided to punish Australia. Punishing Australia from the Chinese perspective was extremely simple. Since this country is so dependent when it comes to trade, you just have to pick an industry to be hit and introduce new tariffs. And this is exactly what happened. First in May it was barley and huge 80% tariff, then beef, coal, lobsters and wine. Each of Beijing's decisions regarding a particular industry caused a greater or lesser shock to many businesses. So one could say there is a real trade war going on between China and Australia, but is it really so? Because on the one hand, more and more new tariffs are introduced. Since May, the rhetoric is becoming more and more severe. Australia, at every step when there is such an opportunity, demonstrates that it has a negative attitude towards China, whether it is about technological solutions or military exercises. But after all, 2 minutes ago, I told you that the data showed that after all these new tariffs, trade between China and Australia hit a new record. So how is that possible? There are factors at stake that today are far more stronger than politics. The simple rules of demand and supply and geography. China today needs raw materials and goods from Australia, and Australia needs the trade with China to build its prosperity. Despite tense relations, Australia has signed a trade agreement binding all countries in the region, including China. But that may change. Politics may prevail. If Australia continues its anti-Chinese policy and China consistently punishes it with market access restrictions, over time China may develop alternative sources for products that Australians provide today. Therefore, there is already a lot of fear in Australia about the outcome of the process that have already started. There is an ongoing debate in Australia about the consequences of economic dependence on China. And this is how Australia lies on the battlefront of these two worlds. Politically and culturally, it is definitely much closer to the West and to the Americans. But when it comes to trade and geography, well, it is closer to Asia. And in Asia, year by year, China is gaining more significant position. This dilemma that Australia faces today is unprecedented. And this is exactly why it is very worth to listen to the news from this distant place on the globe. It allows you to draw conclusions not only about the future of Australia, but about the state of this China-US rivalry. Thank you very much, and I hope see you soon.